questions to the attorney. And now, here I open the floor to Attorney Niranjan Adhikari, and I would like to welcome you all again. Thank you.
Namaste, everyone. Thank you, Milanji, for hosting us here. Thank you to National Policy Forum for hosting us all here. I'm very excited to share my understanding of the new administration's policies and how it may affect student and international professionals. Just to begin with, I will qualify some of the things what Milan has described earlier, and also kind of provide some context of some of those executive action. As you know, some of the hiring freeze in the federal government and also pause in the grant, those gonna directly affect international student population, especially those doing research and scientific work, and also for people to get a scholarship or get some kind of grant, even I would say aid to countries, many countries. So. But that has been injuncted by a federal court. So that policy that the Trump administration has taken is no longer in action right now. Same with the birthright citizenship as well. So number of state attorney generals and also some organization like ACLU and some organization, ethnic organization had sued the government, and that also has been injuncted by the court. So at this point of time, whatever the administration has attempted to do, it sounds like it doesn't have a legal ground to enact those executive presidential action, essentially. As you know, the presidential action cannot change the statute. So whatever is written in the statute or constitution cannot be changed. So I think the government has a very weak policy position. So I think most likely will fail. Now, coming back to some of the executive action which may impact international student population, I guess more than executive action, maybe the enforcement action might affect international student more. One is obviously the ICE, immigration custom enforcement is going to increase its on-site visit, whether it is workplace, on campus, if there's not on campus as such, but definitely in the work sites, right? So, and also people's residence. So there's a lot of information circulating around, people sort of saying that they're targeting particular neighborhoods. Like, for example, there was news about Chicago and some other places, New York City. But I think those are going to be very small and few and far between. So they're not going to go after every city and neighborhoods. I think those will be very much targeted enforcement action. And what we have seen so far is they have targeted only those people who have a removal order, final removal order, and that has been executed, which I also anticipate what's going to happen, what could have happened, but that's what it looks like so far. And there are folks who have some legal trouble, like some criminal warrant or maybe even conviction foreign country, and that may have led to that also ICE enforcement action and also removal for some, as you may have seen in the news. So those going to increase. As you know, every administration does that enforcement action. It's nothing new. During Biden administration, prior Trump administration, also Obama administration, there were hundreds of thousands of people were removed. But I guess the number and then the scope of the enforcement action will increase. So certainly, I think this is something the student population should be very well aware. So, I mean, there are a lot of things going around about know your rights. So as you know, when the ICE agent visits the work site, for them to really access a private workplace, they have to have a judicial warrant. So without judicial warrant, they can only enter the premises with the permission of the owners or occupant, right? So in this case, let's say, for example, you are residing in your home or your apartment, and somebody, somebody comes to, I guess, take any of the immigration action, enforcement action. They have to have either a judicial warrant to really enter the premises. If not, they will just come with the the ICE own executive warrant. So it's not executive warrant. It's it could be a notice to appear, a charging document which puts somebody in notice. That kind of documents they can come with, and that doesn't obliges you to comply. So, but obviously, when you're in a public place when you are driving, for example, and you are stopped by the police officer, at that point of time they can call the ICE, right? So I think what I would suggest folks is to really be in compliance with the law. Obviously, there are a lot of issues might come about unauthorized employment situation or employment outside campus. That's typical issues that students face. In that scenario, what I would advise is to first and foremost, obviously, every student should not violate their student status, which means not to work off campus unless it's authorized. That can only be authorized as there are different practical training program, which is we'll discuss in turn. And also there could be employment authorization based on your economic hardship. Other than that, you don't have off-campus employment authorization, right? So for example, if somebody comes here on a student visa, they are not allowed to work off-campus, just being enrolled in a college or being, student status. So I think you have to be mindful of that, right? So, and I actually I was talking with Milan earlier today, saying that if you're at a campus or university where there's a large number of international population, there's very less availability of work on campus. What I would suggest is if you don't have any work, for example, right? So what I would suggest is to go to a place where there's a I guess bigger city perhaps, or there's a large campus. For example, if you go to a big university, there are going to be tons of on-campus job. But if you go to a small college or a small community college, for example, there may not be tons of on-campus job opportunity, right? So, and as you know, the on-campus job can only be done for 20 hours while you're studying full time. But during a break, when the school is not in session, you can work full time on campus. Again, you can't work on off campus without authorization. So to work with authorization, there is a one category which many of you may know, which is a economic hardship or employment authorization document. So economic hardship, economic based on basically economic, but it's also because based on your personal financial situation. For example, if your family was supporting you and they are no longer able to afford to pay you student fees and whatnot, so you can make the application. More likely than not, that application really, although it sounds very difficult to get, but with the right set of documentation, you should be able to get the employment authorization based on economic hardship. There are a bunch of evidence you can show. You can show currency fluctuation. If the currency of the country where you're from fluctuates drastically, that could be one. Or your family had some kind of medical emergency or financial emergency would kind of reduce your source of funding. If your scholarship amount was reduced by the university, there could be a lot of other those factors that you can use to qualify for that. But one caveat for off-campus employment or authorization, you can only apply for that after 1 year of full-time study. So you cannot apply for that right away when you enroll to the program. Other thing folks can also do, I don't know if that could be applicable, is to reduce the coursework if you have a reasonable reason, like for example, it could be a medical, or could be academic hardship. If that's the case, you can reduce a little bit of coursework. That will allow you to perhaps, I guess, pay less tuition because you don't pay it once, you pay by credit. And also probably increase your chances of getting, on-campus job while you in reduced coursework. So you could also utilize that option if that is applicable for you. Now I also want to talk about some off-campus employment based on completion of your degree, which is, as you know, there's a optional practical training, and then there's an extension for that, which is STEM extension. So that you can apply up to 90 days before your graduation, and same for STEM, you can apply 90 days before your STEM authorization should start. I advise that strongly to apply well in advance, not to have last minute issues. For example, if there's any mistake with the application, you'll have enough time to reapply. I have had folks reach out to us when actually all the deadline has passed and there's not much we can do. I think for OPT, obviously you want to apply maybe 80 days or 85 days in advance before you graduate. And for STEM, you can do the same. As you know, for STEM, one requirement is that the employer has to be e-verified and they have to enter into the training plan agreement with you and the school. So that is more sort of, for some employee might be slightly burdensome, but if your employer hasn't been enrolled for e-verify, while you're in OPT, you can try to get them to enroll to e-verify program. It's an electronic program. It doesn't take much, and the process is pretty simple. The employer signs a MOU with the DHS, and they should be able to do the e-verify for I-9 compliance. I guess let's probably open up some questions or maybe answer some of the questions we may have received. I think we covered a number of topics. Or maybe I want to talk one important employment authorization option. One is the curricular practical training, CPT. The curricular practical training is available for folks where the degree program requires practical training. For example, if the degree program has a system of giving credit for your practical training, then CPT program can be used. Unfortunately, CPT program can also only be used after 1 year of your study for undergraduate. For graduate, you can do, it's called immediate participation. If that graduate program has a CPT program within the curriculum, then they can do immediately. But for undergraduate, you still have to finish 1 year study. But that could be additional work authorization option for you, and that is very much used by a lot of STEM professionals. Actually, in certain fields, it sounds like CPT is part of the established curriculum. So we talked about off-campus employment with the employment authorization, behavior economic hardship, OPT, STEM extension, and CPT. And another tips I want to give is that when you apply for all these applications, be extremely careful. Read a second time, third time, make sure everything is done correctly. And also, when you are applying for this, your DSO has to make the recommendation in the service system before you apply for those applications. So just don't file on your own. You always have to closely work with the DSO and allow certain time for DSO to do the preparatory work, because they have to review and they have to give you new I-20. So don't sort of rush for the last minute. Everybody's busy these days. You have to at least allow a couple of weeks for them to really get to that updated I-20 and to make that service recommendation. People who are already on OPT program, they can also see their status and everything on the SAVE program. So that will help you track your status and whatnot. But certainly you have to work very closely with the DSO and try to attend some of the DSO's training or educational program as much as you can. And sometimes that might also help you to prepare for your future, work visa or immigration options while you're still a student, I think. Yeah. Milanji, should we maybe go to some of the questions we have received in advance and maybe open up for the questions, and then we go to next other topics, I guess. Sorry, you are mute. I'm going to be mute now.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna direct you some of the questions that I got from the listeners as you were speaking. So these are quick, questions to clarify some of your statements. So one of the things somebody asked was, what kind of identification documents do you recommend we carry with us? Original photocopies of documents, passport, I-20, or both in campus versus public spaces. So they just want to know what kind of documents would qualify to be their, identification documents in case of, uh, uh, you know, um, questioning from the police or ICE.
I'm
I
going to
think,
give a couple of tips. One important thing is that every time as a non-citizen, you are supposed to have document to show your status. For example, if you're a student, you want to carry your I-94. If you are a green card holder, you want to carry your copy of green card holder. As long as you are immigrant, as you know, anyone without U.S. citizenship, they're immigrant. They're considered immigrants. So everybody should carry some kind of immigration document. It doesn't have to be original. It doesn't have to be original. You can have your government issued ID, like driving license or ID from the DMV, and maybe also your student ID. But I do recommend people carrying their I-94. So I-94 for anyone on the F1 status, H-1B, and other non-immigrant persons. For green card holder, they should carry a copy of their green card. As you know, even if the government has a question about your status and whatnot, they can't simply, put you. I mean, I guess if you can establish your status, lawful status, then they can put you in removal proceeding, or they can issue a notice to appear. But as long as you're in status, they will not, I guess, take any enforcement action. Besides, obviously, asking you for those documents.
Yeah, and somebody was asking if you could clarify what you meant by final removal order.
So if somebody is put in removal proceeding when the government alleges that you are not in lawful status, then they'll give that person a notice that kind of alleges that fact, and then you get a time at the court, right? So the immigration judge will hear your case, and then will require you to plea and for you to make your defenses. But obviously, the government has a burden of proof to show that you are not here lawfully. So government has to show that, for example, your visa has expired, your identity has expired, you're no longer studying, for example, your school has terminated your service. Um, with that, obviously, the government has, proved the burden of proof. In that case, if the judge orders removal from the United States, that's the order. However, you can appeal that order. So on within that deadline period, if you appeal that order, then the case will be pending situation. In that case, they will not do the order. I mean, they will not remove you. But if you miss that deadline to file the appeal, or if you missed the deadline, or you also lost the case in the appeal, then you will be, considered, you will be issued a final removal order, and you will be considered a person with a final removal order. For those person, government can remove any time. So in other words, the people who've been caught recently, if they had a final removal, the government doesn't have to do any further proceeding. They can just put them and send back, right? So I think people with a final removal order is the one who are being targeted currently.
Somebody here is asking, actually he lost a job, he or she lost their job while on OPT last month, and they have reported this to their DSO in January, and they're trying to see if this will be a problem, and if in what
So
sense.
I think unemployment during optional practical training is something to be very careful of. As you know, you cannot accrue more than 90 days of unemployment period. One way to avoid that is to really foresee what is happening within the organization. If you think there's a likelihood of some downsizing and whatnot, you should try to find another job. And for people who have some idea or some business idea, you can actually be on OPT or even STEM with your own business, actually, if it's done right. So, for example, you can work in a startup company with your friends and other partners. You can work even with a professor, for example, being a researcher. You can also do that. You can work with, I guess, other company. I mean, it could be even other sort of internship, for example. It doesn't have to be, always the full-time job and whatnot. So as long as you meet that 20 hours employment or internship, that could work. For people on STEM, I think that could be a little challenging because the employer has to be e-verify. And another important thing they have to do is that, sign their training plan. And then other important requirement for STEM employer is that they need to compensate based on standard policy. So for example, for that particular job or activity, if they're usually supposed to compensate the person, they should compensate. If they don't have to, if they don't typically compensate, then they don't have to. So there's some confusion there. People might think that without compensation, you cannot do STEM. You can do STEM without compensation, but the burden is on the employers to show that they are properly complying with the rule. But the STEM also, you can be a founder of the company or a startup which is already in existence, or working for the startup company. There's no size, there's no need of any particular type of organization, as long as they're related to program study.
Um, okay. Ed, I thought you were done with the question answering.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
yeah, that was regarding the how many days and unemployment. I mean, obviously, this term has total of 150 days, but for OPT alone is only 90 days. So you have to, therefore, I said, when you plan your OPT application, if you don't have a job lined up, try to have that 60 days grace period fully used. So that means after graduation, you have 60 days to have your, OPT start date. So if you don't have a job already lined up, don't have your OPT start date immediately after your graduation. Have some cushion. You can have 30 days, 40 days after your graduation as a start date, right? And as I said, you can apply 90 days ahead. So, but again, depending on when you get your OPT employment, so try to sort of time right so that you don't accrue that 90 days unemployment period, or sort of immediately as soon as you graduate if you don't have a job. So try to be strategic about that.
Um, okay, so someone here is
And by the way,
asking,
I want to caveat myself here. See, this is a general information we are providing. This is not legal advice. You should not act upon what we discuss here. This is just for general information purpose only. And some of the thing I said here may sound legal advice. It's not a legal advice. It's just intended as a general information alone.
someone here is asking, um, he or she is graduating in May 2025, and they are trying to ask if it will be difficult for a graduate to find an H-1B sponsor when immigration rules are being this stringent.
Well, if somebody is graduating in, you said May, right? March or May? May 20.
May 2025.
Okay, so for those folks can apply for H-1B lottery if they are going through the CAP program, meaning you have to have that degree when before you file, at the time when you file, or in the fiscal year, start of fiscal year, right? So you can do the registration. I mean, at this point of time, there's no particular executive action, any policy change that government has taken. So I don't foresee much changes in this space, H-1B program, for example, or some of the rule. From past, past Trump administration, we know that they tried to make things a little bit stringent with some wage increase, prevailing wage increase rule, and also additional evidence requirement for the H-1B. So they haven't done it. They haven't done it this time yet, but we don't know. But I think that could be coming. So I guess it's good idea to be in caution when it comes to those documentation. So for example, let's say for example, right? So if you're working with an employer directly, it's better than working with a consulting company. If you have an option, obviously, if you have an option, you want to work with a employer directly versus consulting company. They may have project, for example. You may be hired, but then they don't have project, right? So they're not be able to pay you, and also they won't be able to document the work. So that could be challenging. So if you have an option, try to work with a direct employer.
Um, Somebody here is asking about STEM OPT without H-1B. So his or her STEM OPT is ending soon, and he or she does not have H-1B. And he's trying to ask if day one CPT master's option still a safe option. And is there any alternatives? Their STEM OPT, I think, is ending in 5 months. So they're trying to see if day one CPT is still a safe option.
Right. So, folks whose STEM OPT is ending, obviously, you have to make that plan. What you're going to do next. So, CPT program, joining different program could be another option. There are certain requirements I'll just outline a little bit later. Other one, obviously, trying to get on H-1B program or maybe in the green card path, meaning have employee sponsor your green card process. I know it takes time these days, but at least to have that process started will help you in long run. For CPT itself, the requirement is that the curriculum itself should require the practical training, and it has to be part of the curriculum. It cannot be just, the DSO kind of authorizes you and then you start working. You could, but theoretically, but at the time when you're trying to change status or extend status, it could be a problem. Change status, especially for F1 students, as you know. Typically, what I would recommend is the university and the employer has to have some agreement. There's a set of agreement they have to have, like it's called cooperative agreement. So they have to have that cooperative agreement, and there's a documentation you have to show that you're actually studying and you're studying full time and attending classes, doing homework, paying your tuitions, and be also closer to campus, or at least visit campus frequently as the program requires. And there's also a lot of issues where people don't take enough credit. That could be a problem, as you know. So you need to have enough credit, and even the remote work, remote, I guess, study could be a problem. So, the on-site, for a F1 student, there's a rule. How many credit you can take remote is, I think, 3 credit, I believe, 3 or 4 credits. Um, so the rest of the course credits should be taken on campus. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we've had a lot of questions relating, coming from people who are looking to graduate soon and are trying to, take the OPT route, and a lot of people who are already in OPT and trying to transition into H1B. So I think it may be useful for a lot of folks listening to us right now. If you could just sum up and give few tips, or like some things you may want to have them understand or know in relation to, administration change and how it may affect, the realities for the students who are looking to graduate soon and the people who are on like temporary status such as OPT and even S1B. You can give your viewpoints from the government perspective and also the market, how the market may react in response to the government administration and hiring maybe students in non-immigration status, how it may affect the students' capacity to look after jobs or to retain their jobs and things, stay in jobs.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging, just not necessarily from administration perspective, but economic downturn. And I do foresee that's gonna be worse. I mean, as you know, with the trade war, so there's going to be some, very likely some reduction in job availability. I think I have heard, I've been reading a lot of news about there has been increased number of people looking for jobs. So there is that possibility of a student not finding job could be a real challenge. Another one, obviously, employer not wanting to go through the immigration processes, kind of be worried about what happens if the student do not get what they are trying to get, like for example H-1B work visa and whatnot. That's something matter of education. You need to educate your employer. I mean, some of these processes definitely cumbersome, but on the other hand can be done, right? So you definitely need to educate your employer. And I guess, as you know, as a international student, you should have your non-immigrant intent. So if things go south, you should have backup plan to even be able to work in your home country. So doing some learning some new skills which are more useful when you go back, or maybe even having some business development here while you're here. So there could be a friend or colleague who's working in certain field, and you kind of be their person's marketing person here, and then try to kind of build that clientele, because that really works very well for IT professional. For example, I'll give you an example. Say for example, if you have a friend who runs a company over there and you want to do some outsourcing work, and you can do the marketing work for that company. The law doesn't prohibit to work for foreign company while remaining in the United States. You can be in F1 status, could be working for foreign company abroad, and receiving the compensation from that. You just have to document what you're doing. That's not you are entering into employment in the United States. So I do not see that being a legal trouble for that person to do that. So you can certainly do that. And then obviously, while you're here, you can look for a job elsewhere. It could be another country, not necessarily in your home country. It could be third country, for example, right? So certain professional may have better luck in finding those job, like for example, technology professionals, maybe even accounting professionals, medical professionals might have better luck finding those job in other third country. So you should be open to that idea. So for that, obviously, you need to be very active in job search, and also appearing for interviews and whatnot. So
Perfect. And someone is curious to know if Trump administration might affect processing time of OPT or OPT process in general. I think this is a general yes or no question. What do you see?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, the immigration processing delays and that sort of thing will depend on based on the volume and how administration processed this application. As you know, prior Trump administration, they increased some vetting process, meaning for people who are going through some immigration status change, they were doing more scrutiny. I guess we can anticipate that, but that will slightly reduce maybe the processing time. Nothing else. But I want to add one important thing is that every time whenever you're applying for OPT or STEM or H-1B, have a plan, right? So as I said earlier, as long as you file application on time, I think the processing time, even if it takes a little longer, should not be a problem. But if you do things last minute, um, and then obviously if you make a mistake by accident, then it could be a problem, especially for initial OPT or STEM extension. So H-1B, as you know, there's a hard deadline, which is you have to register that for lottery within that deadline. If you don't, obviously, you won't be able to do it after that. So for other folks also, there's no hard deadline, but there's a timeline when you should apply. So you should definitely plan that.
Somebody just send me a
We also
question.
get the questions from pre-submitted questions because there are some questions about TPS and some other questions. I guess I have some of those questions in front of me. I can just top.
Okay. I think we can finish the F1 related questions and then I think we can get to that till towards the end of the
Okay,
session
sounds good.
to wrap things up. Um, so I think this is F1 related question from someone. They are trying to know if you suggest people to work outside while in F1 status. Now, I think I understand, I think where they're trying to come from. I think given a lot of I've heard of few instances where the students were caught working outside in some of the areas, probably around Dallas and other places. So I think it may be useful for a lot of people if you could give them an idea about what the rights of ICE are, how they proceed with their action, how they can be cautious, how they can understand their own rights in regard to answering to them, responding to them, or cooperating with them, and how to be careful in these areas because I've
Right.
heard, yeah.
Well, I mean, see, I mean, my legal or sort of general information will be about what could be the consequences, right? I'm not gonna say what you should do or not do. What I would say is consequences is that your visa will be canceled, and you'll be put in removal proceeding. With the current administration, as you know, the enforcement action is such that they may put you in detention even when they are putting when they are going through you are going through your removal proceeding. But probably not. I mean, not for everyone. So I think they don't have enough resources even for that. So certainly, consequences will be your visa will be canceled, you'll be removed. If the government finds you are not maintaining your F1 status and you are in remote proceeding, right? So, and for the employer, there are different ways employee can be held accountable. One is the employee can be sanctioned, can be disbarred from you know, hiring students, for example, or they can be even criminally punished if the employee engages in systematic hiring of unauthorized person, like a pattern and practice test, right? If the employer has had that patent of hiring unauthorized person, then they can also face a criminal penalty, right? So obviously, some of these laws are very stringent. Even the fine is very hefty for employer. So I think for that reason and others, I do advise caution. I think both for employer and employee as well. Um, and also, I think there's a more increased risks in enterprises where there's a public access, for example, in a place where public can see and whatnot. So just from practical standpoint, those work site might be more prone to a government enforcement action. So I think with that in mind, I think you need to really exercise, caution and avoid any sort of unauthorized activity on F1 status. That would really present a big problem for you. And as you know, if you are found to be student visa violator, you can be faced with a permanent bar. So then if you are removed, you're never allowed to come to United States. So I think, I think I'll definitely advise people to be very, very cautious. when dealing with maintaining their status.
One of the student, maybe they're pursuing their PhD or not, but their general question is, what if the funding for the project gets stopped due to the federal restrictions in the middle of PhD? How do we tackle that?
Yeah, that's a big challenge for tons of people right now. I guess for his PhD, I think you would have to find alternative source of funding, maybe being a teaching assistant, maybe working in a lab, which is maybe privately funded or funded by different sources, or maybe um, finding additional scholarship or grant from the university itself or some private foundation. That could be other way to sort of cope with the situation. But yeah, I mean, if your program is fully funded by any federal grant, then it could have a consequences when it comes to funding and also the grants that the PhD receives.
Um, Someone is trying to know if there is any timeline for NIW application and looking at scenarios. Will there be longer wait time? And being a STEM student, what are prime things to be considered for NIW application? This is related to, I think, yeah, AB2 NIW.
Yeah, so EB2 and NIW. Well, I guess timeline obviously is not going to improve anymore because there are tons of increase of number of people who are filing this immigrant petition, and with the increase um, well, I guess since pandemic, right? Since end of pandemic, the number of immigrant application for employment has really surged in every category. So the advance or movement in visa availability will be very less. So I think for you, I guess to be able to get a some kind of work visa, obviously OPT and STEM authorization. If that also not enough, there is another program. It's called Compelling Circumstance EAD. So that's a work authorization based on compelling circumstances. If you have I-140 approved and H-1B actually. So if you have H-1B and then I-140 approved, if you had H-1B in the past or H-1B right now. So for those folks can apply for compelling circumstance EAD, basically showing that you have a compelling circumstance to be authorized to work. So that could be your financial situation, your obligation, your loan, your mortgage, your family obligations, and also your particular situation like medical and whatnot, and from being from country where you cannot get a good medical care or job opportunity, that could be a compelling circumstance to justify that work permit. But it's very narrow program, as you know. It's not available for anybody with I-140. So it's only for people with I-140 and H-1B as well.
I have a simple general question. Somebody on F1 visa is planning to invite their parents for a couple of months, and they're trying to know what could be some of the things they should be careful about in this context. So he also notes that their parents already have a visa, but they have not just visited
Okay.
the USA.
Yeah, for those folks, just a standard rule applies. So visa is just permission for you to present yourself at the border. That's not a guarantee that will be allowed in. But with a non-immigrant intent and not intending to immigrate to United States, the tourist visa holders should be able to travel, should not have problem. Obviously, the duration is very limited. They have to have their sufficient resources to fund their travel and whatnot. I don't foresee any challenges for tourists, but obviously some level of scrutiny as in the purpose of travel, that could be really depends on the immigration officer at the port of entry.
Somebody's trying to know if visa duration limits are introduced, what options will they have to extend their stay and complete their degree?
I didn't get that question fully. What is?
I think they're trying to ask if visa duration limits are introduced. For example, from 5 years, maybe it comes down to 3 years or 2 years. What
Mhm.
options will they have to extend their stay and complete their degree? I think it should not be a problem. It's just like you can still stay
Right.
in the US and enroll in a university and complete your degree even if your visa is already expired. But yeah, if the individual who had the question, if you think your question is not well understood or well
Let me
answered,
try to answer, and then if they
sure.
have follow-up, they can send us a message here. So obviously, visa is for purposes of entry into the United States. Once you are in the United States, you can maintain status without having a valid visa. You just have to have a status. So visa could be expired, but in future, if you have to travel internationally, then you have to get a visa, right? So if you had a F1 visa, for example, H1 visa or tourist visa and whatnot, then you have to renew it. For people who are in Eastern visa, you can typically renew that in any other country as well. It doesn't have to be in your home country. You can renew in even third country. But I do caution using third country sometime. It could present some challenges. But yeah, for Eastern visa holder and even for H1B also, you can do third country now with the electronic data sharing system. Um, I guess, as long as you are in status, even if your visa is expired, that won't be a concern.
Someone this is the second time I'm hearing this. This is about if Trump administration have introduced or has any plans about green card path for university graduates. I think this was something they talked about during the election. So I think, yep.
Yeah, I doubt that will happen. I'll tell you many ways because see, I mean, all these GOP congresspersons, all they're trying to do is limit immigration. So I think I don't see for them to really have that kind of broad brush of green card option. Green card is so limited number, as you know. So they actually trying to reduce. They're talking about doing away with diversity visa program, right? Immigrant visa program. So I didn't foresee for any new immigration plan or program which might pass. Simply because I think the Republican Party they are not sympathetic to any increase in immigration, unfortunately. Um, I think the one immigration reform bill which may actually get passed is the DACA, maybe because obviously the court had ended the program, and there's a lot of people in that limbo. So, but that too, we haven't seen much progress for the DACA holders. But those folks are, I guess many of you may not be under that program. There was one question somebody asked, which is kind of very, direct question, but I'll answer it anyway. So, can I work with a GCEAD and also H1B on the side? I mean, as you know, if you have a independent work authorization in addition to your H1B work authorization, you can use the independent work authorization based on GC for other kind of activities. If you want to maintain H1B status, obviously you have to continue that job. Similar to that, I guess there's a one question about any chance of visa bulletin forward movement for EB3 category. Not really. I mean, there's going to be a couple months movement, maybe in October, November. But next couple months, there won't be much movement in EB3 category. Definitely not in the non-skilled worker for sure, but skilled worker might be some forward movement a little. And there's also somebody had a question about TPS. I also had a TPS, so it will impact for filing. I got TPS with my when I was in college. As you know, TPS is a temporary treatment. So it's not in sort of status in itself. If you had a valid status at the time when you file for TPS, now adjust status or change the status, then it would be possible for you to do that. But if somebody didn't have a status before, or they were out of status and then got TPS, now they want to change status or they want to adjust their status, then it won't be possible for them to do. I mean, they can certainly do a consular processing of immigrant visa, meaning to be able to get the green card, immigrant visa abroad, and then come to United States. But if the person was maintaining status and got the TPS, now has other option, they can certainly benefit from that TPS. And as you know, the TPS is ending soon, and I doubt the administration will extend it further. Only thing I can foresee is that they may just give the final notice of 60 days. So June, July, August could be the last period of TPS, but we never know. So I don't know if they have some sympathy, I guess, for TPS folks. So
I think there's an interesting question, somebody asking about, they coming to US on F2 and after some months getting it changed to F1 and they're trying to know if, so since they changed it to F1, now they're doing their masters and they're trying to know if they don't find a job, after graduation, can they change it back to F2?
they can, yeah. I mean, obviously the status you can change back and forth, and that's actually a good option for some folks, right? So, for example, if your spouse in F1, you can be on F2 and vice versa, and same with the H1B. Spouse can be H1 and you can be H4, and then vice versa. So, I think it could be a very good option for those folks, if that's the case. Yeah.
Somebody over the direct message questions if they think as the Trump administration considers offering green cards to graduates, uh, does this program include LLM graduates as eligible candidates? I think we've
Well,
already
again, we
answered the
don't
question,
know,
right?
right? So, I mean, these are just, speeds, campaign speeds, we don't see any such program in the pipeline, any bill being proposed. I doubt it. So, as I said, the entire Republican administration and party as a whole is really trying to reduce the immigration. So, I don't foresee for them to increase. I mean, they're even attacking H-1B visa program, which is only 85,000 number, and, it's very high skill worker in so many fields. The 85,000 for such a big economy is nothing, right? It runs out so quickly, meaning they apply 400,000, more than 400,000 people apply for the H-1B lottery. So even they're attacking that program. So I don't foresee them to have a, immigrant visa for folks, right? So I think that's too optimistic. I'm not that optimistic, I guess. Yeah.
Um, Somebody has a question. Their parents came to the US in DV 2 years back, and they are over 21 years old. So their processing time for for the permanent visa would be around 7 to 8 years. So they're trying to know what options apart from F1 can they pursue to remain in the United States? Any kind of work authorization, and he's also trying to know your contacts just so he could consult you later. But yeah, I think
Well, I
yeah.
can answer that question first. One is that, I mean, obviously, if you have immigrant visa petition filed by any sponsor, that doesn't give immediate benefit as such. So you have to continue to maintain your non-immigrant status, whether F1 student, getting practical training, and then even maybe work visa, or maybe even getting, sponsorship from your employer. So that could be better option than waiting for the date to be current. So I think for those folks, I guess just continue maintaining your non-immigrant status. Um, and if that's not a possibility, then obviously prospectively you may be able to immigrate to United States, maybe not now. So I mean, certainly not now. So I guess you can study here and then get all the practical training option or maybe even work visa if possible. If not, then you can later join them. So.
Yep. And another question through direct message. When is it advisable to go for day one CPT? And what are the potential risks for somebody who is in PhD or master's? Not sure if this is already answered, but wanted to know more about this. So yeah.
Well, as I said earlier about day one CPT, as long as the program has a CPT component established by the curriculum, you can certainly take part in CPT program. I don't see any risk, and we have done tons of change the status from F1 to H1 and others. The one caveat is, as I said earlier, is that university and the employer has to have that cooperative agreement, and you have to be attending classes and documenting that, doing homework and doing assignments, and be in good standing actually. So that's the key, right? So as long as you have that, day one CPT could be another practical training option for folks who are in student status.
somebody is asking, my parents have appointment for a B1, B2 visa in March. I'm planning for graduation in May. So they're graduating in May this year, and they have their parents' visa appointment in 3 months. And I have heard recently most of this visa is not approved. What should they have to say during visa appointment during this tough period? So they're trying to get tips for helpful visa results, I guess.
I mean, they are already applied. Have they got an appointment? I mean, as you know, the
Yes,
appointment is
yes, yes.
very
I think
hard
it,
to get these days.
I think you mentioned they're scheduled in March.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, the challenge is obviously the typical for any tourist visa. So the government has, or visa office has tons of discretion. So they should be prepared to answer question when the question is asked about their intent, what they plan to do, their sort of ties to their country, job, and other ties, economic ties and whatnot. And obviously, if they have had history of international travel, that could be helpful, but obviously that can be changed. Other thing is just to be prepared for the interview is something will help. But I mean, I haven't heard much recently, as in if they increased the scrutiny for tourist visa. I've seen people getting it, but I think, but you cannot be sure whether they will be granted visa. So again, be prepared for the interview, and then I don't think the tourist visa these days requires tons of documents like a finance and otherwise. So it really depends on how the case was presented, the purpose of the travel, and the source of funding. Not sourcing, but I guess how they're gonna fund their trip. If they're able to answer those, I think more than likely they may get the visa. Yeah.
Yep, I think we have generally addressed all the questions we have received through direct messages, and also the questions that were submitted through the form. So, and I've also think we have hit the 1 hour limit, but I think we can still push for 10, 15 more minutes if the guys out there have any more questions. Uh, but towards the end, we can again still come back to uh, what sort of effects can the Trump administration, his administration's action can have on the student visa holders in the US, how they can be careful, how they cannot, make sure they don't jeopardize their status in the US.
Right. I can
Um,
briefly talk about a few other options actually, not just what we discussed, F1. Obviously, now there's a new program or new policy for H-1B program. So H-1B can be filed by entrepreneur now. So if you have a company where you have a controlling interest, that company can petition on your own behalf. So for example, you can have, you own the majority of the shares or even own 100%. It's just that you need to have a bona fide job or bona fide work. As long as you can document that, the entrepreneur H-1B could be an option. But as you know, the H-1B people have to be compensated certain ways, the prevailing ways or offered ways, whichever is higher. So that's the basic requirement about the salary and whatnot. There's another program which is a entrepreneur parole program. If you are a entrepreneur or startup founder and you are getting receiving grant or even investment, you could qualify for that. I believe it's 280,000 minimum investment and combination investment, grant, and others. Every year, obviously, the number increases, how much the external investment has to be. There is that program, which is it's been there for a few years now. But the H-1B entrepreneur-based H-1B program is a new policy which was enacted by Biden administration, and most likely this will continue. So we have done some applications for some entrepreneurs, so that could be a good program for some people. Um, and then I'll just add a couple more thing on H-1B. Now, recently, the government has also changed a policy about cap exempt H-1B. So cap exempt where there's no H-1B cap, fiscal year cap, 85,000 quota. So those are employed where their fundamental activities in basic science or applied research in not-for-profit research organization or government research organization or institution higher education, or a company which is providing services to them. So you can be working for a company which is not a cap exempt, but if the work and service are provided for that cap exempt kind of category employer, then you can be cap exempt. And they changed the policy so that the fundamental activity of that cap exempt organization doesn't have to be primary activity. It can be just one of the fundamental activities. So one organization can be doing multiple things. For example, I had a case where they were doing some public health research, but they were doing other government contracting work that wasn't necessarily research, right? So they could qualify now with the new policy. So that's also an expansion of the H-1B policy, which is very helpful for certain employers. That's something will be very much helpful for folks in research focused kind of work or working for organization which is likely cap exempt. So that's another major change in H-1B program, which might be very attractive to some folks. Yeah.
I have one final question similar to what we have earlier related to B1, B2 visa category interviews. They're trying to know, let's say their set graduation date is in May 2026, which is next year, and the interview is scheduled this year at a time when they don't even have their graduation invitation letter. So what should they do in this situation if I plan to bring my parents? Would this be okay? That's it.
Well, I mean, see, those documents are not essential or indispensable. It's just it just suggests the documents. Even if you don't have that invitation, they can certainly still apply and try to show their eligibility for the visa. So I think that should be okay. But I guess the purpose should be this to be able to articulate what purpose they're going to travel to United States and the plan to return, obviously, that their visit is short term and they have a plan and even arrangement to return. I think that would be very helpful for the application.
I think we've answered this multiple times, but again, it's been asked if Trump administration policy impact day one CPT programs for international students.
At the moment, not really, because as you know, some of these things were enacted by regulatory changes. So if the government wants to change that policy, they have to enact new regulations. So I don't foresee a change in any policy for at least for next 6 months. But longer than that, I cannot really predict what policy the new administration will take. But I must add that the higher education is an industry, right? So a lot of universities are very much vital to the local economy. So I don't think they'll do any sort of abrupt policy change. There's going to be a lot of pushback, but there could be some possibility of I guess scrutiny or maybe limiting certain work authorization options and whatnot. We have seen that in other countries, as you know, in United Kingdom and some other countries. But I don't think United States will do that because obviously these universities have very important interest to welcome international students for their economy as well. In fact, the international student funds the local scholarship program in a way.
Yep. I don't think we have any new questions. I think you can take the final moments to conclude your remarks, have some tips for the students on F1 and on the status, and also maybe your contact and how they can reach out to you in the future.
Well, I guess I think having a plan will certainly help. For example, if you're a student, you want to plan for your work, what authorization, what you can obtain. So, for example, trying to look for a job early on will really help. And also even making some immigration plan. So if you are, for example, in a field where you can do a lot of research and publications, you should use that status to do that so that you could qualify for O1A visa, which is a temporary visa, but you can extend for longer period. And or you can even apply for NIW, EB2 NIW, NASA interest wherever where your work can has a merit and has also US NASA importance. or in a field where the field has a global implication. It doesn't have to be only US. So if your work has a global implication, the NIW NASA interest waiver option could be available for you even without a job offer, right? So that could be another thing you can plan. Obviously, EB1A, first preference, could be another program for you to plan. Again, for that, you want to get published, you want to present at conferences, you want to get your work being cited by others, you've been cited by the trade journal or magazine or newspapers or scholarly articles. You can receive certain grants or award or scholarship and things like that. Or maybe even a government grant, for example. It could be even a small grant. If you get those grants, that could be positive for NIW or EB1A or O1 visa program. So basically, try to use the resources which is available for you on campus. As you know, some of the grant program, the university may have partnership with a certain agency of the government or even some foundations. Those could be very helpful for you to establish eligibility for EB2 NIW or O1 or EB1A. I think having enough knowledge and understanding about all these programs and planning for those, and also having backup plan, as you know, as a non-immigrant, we can't always be certain as to what can happen in future. Obviously, the job is always going to be challenging for people where the employer has to sponsor, right? People are not willing to take that extra step. So I guess for any job opportunity that you're looking, and make sure, and you can even track that. Make sure if the employer has previously sponsored someone. Doesn't mean that you cannot work for employer where they haven't sponsored anyone, because they prospectively can. And as you know, the tons of immigration sponsorship, even H-1B sponsorship, is done by a small employer or a small business. So it doesn't have to be large corporation or large business. So as long as they want to hire you and that you have a right talent, I think U.S. employers are more open to retain international talent. Another thing I would also say, international degree, as you know, in of itself is very valuable. Whatever path, whatever career path you choose, whether in your home country, in other third country, or United States. So try to do very well in your studies, and then be open to any opportunity out there. So if you have that sort of mindset, I think you'll be able to navigate. And I wish everyone's best of luck.
Yep. As a follow-up on, I think EB2, somebody was had a quick question if there is any threshold for publications and citations for EB2 and NIW.
Well, there's no number as such, but as you know, the work has to have substantial merit. So it has to be such that it has to have implications or impact on certain field as a whole, not necessarily for employer, not necessarily for I guess very narrow I guess not narrow industry, but if it's a local impact, not a geographic sense, but let's say, for example, your research kind of helps with the job creation in particular locality, that could be a substantial merits, right? And with respect to NASA importance, it's not a geography. Again, as long as your work has some implication, which is wider and for US as a whole, that could be one of the way you can show your NASA importance, or it could be an impact where the government has considered as a NASA importance. For example, as you know, the government has recently enacted a policy program where they have considered certain technologies or certain industry as a critical. So if you fall under that, that way you can also show NASA importance. But doesn't have to be actually. That's just a guidance. As you know, there are tons of way you can show NASA importance. It could be kind of industry work or kind of work you do. So I'll give you example. For example, if you're a healthcare professional and you have created some sort of I guess solution or some kind of methodology with your research, which kind of tremendously reduces the expenditure for U.S. government. It hasn't have to be already done. Is this potential that could be a NASA importance. So or for example, if you have a patent or and the patent has some interest, like somebody wants to license your patent, That can also be. There's so many ways you can. So the substantive merit and not so important. So I would encourage you to visit some resources on USI's website or some law firm's website. I mean, we have some writing on our website too about EB2NI, EB1A category, and USIS also has tremendous resources for you to look and also to plan actually. So
Yep. I think with that, we are in a point where we can successfully wrap up. Um, I think you're yet to give your introduction. I mean, your contact details to the folks out there who
yeah,
want to
I'll
reach out
share
to you.
with my screen here. I think well, I mean, this is my contact. Um, but obviously, actually this is not my contact. So here, first page. Yeah, this is my contact. You can email us and also you can visit us on our website. I typically try to do consultation for folks, especially for student. I have a very reduced consultation program where you don't have to pay tons, and or if you're just wanting to learn about some of the qualifying criteria, we provide free consultation. But if you have a substantive legal question, then there could be a consultation you can schedule with us. And obviously, as I said, I welcome you to visit our website, learn about some of the program, general information, as you know, and then also, USI's website. So they also have tons of resources there. So yeah. And again, thank you, Milanji, for the opportunity and National Policy Forum for hosting us here. Very delighted to talk about this program. It's going to be a very hot button topic in coming months, I guess, with the new administration in place. So please stay tuned. And again, take care of yourself. Don't panic or sort of fear about any enforcement action. As you know, the government has a very targeted group of people that they're enforcing these immigration rules, but students should also be very much careful, I think, when it comes to, being compliant with your student status.
Yep. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you so much for sending us such good questions. I think everybody who joined had a fruitful session and learned a lot. Thank you so much, and special thanks to Attorney Niranjan Adhikari ji for being with us here and taking your time, valuable time to answer the questions we had.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.